Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Let's Get Wicked podcast. I am your host, Joker Jonesy, and today we have a returning guest of the show that I'm very excited to talk with. He does his own stunts. It's Stuntman, everybody. Welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. Seriously, I'm very excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing well. Just ready to talk about some Villainous.
I'm excited too. We have a very exciting topic to talk about today. We are actually returning to our tier list topic. Now, it's only going to be me and Stuntman today, but I think Stuntman and I are going to have some very interesting conversations about this tier list shenanigans. So I hope you're all excited. Before we do that, though, I do have a little bit of housekeeping, our first housekeeping in a little while. One of the first things that I would like to talk about is that we actually have a new Villainous Discord up. It is actually called the Let's Get Wicked server that's all about Villainous. The reason why we're doing this is mainly just to help better manage the community a little bit. We actually put together a lot of different categories to help different members of the community interact in different ways. Some of the feedback that we got was more of have more support for customs, having more community hangouts for people who aren't necessarily big on the game at the moment, but still want to talk with people from the server. And also just trying to manage like competitive play versus more casual play and stuff. So we want to better manage that. We now have a new community. And if you were like, I didn't realize that, where can I go get onto this server? If you go into the description of the podcast, as well as the YouTube video for this particular video, as well as now all the videos, I've updated everything. You can just hop in the new server. We got some fancy stuff in there. Stuntman actually helped put together this new feature on the server. So thank you, Stuntman.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. Just to explain how it works is that now when you join, you will go to the rules section and then you will have to emote based off the different content that you want to look at. So we actually have it set up so Marvel content will be coming when we know that's coming, and I'm very excited about that. But if you don't have anything to do with Marvel, you could just not check off Marvel and you won't see any of that conversation. So it's a nice way to kind of manage the way that you look at the content. But that's all on that front. Message me on Discord if you got any questions about how it's working, if you're having any issues. I know we've had a few kinks when we're trying to work some stuff out, but just let us know. We want the best for our community, so that's why we're doing this. But enough of that nonsense. It is time. Are you ready, Stuntman?
Ready when you are, Joker.
All right, let's do this. So what we're doing is that, so on Tier Maker, for those of you who don't know, I actually put together a template for Disney Villainous. I actually had this Tier Maker all the way back when we initially did our tier list topic on episode 3. I did update this a little bit now, having some new letter tiers, as well as adding the new characters from Perfectly Wretched. And what Stuntman and I are going to do is that we're going to go up from the letters, starting down from the bottom at E, and then you can go all the way up to S. And if you want to put together your own tier list and share it on the Discord or social media and all that fun stuff, you can go to tiermaker.com, just type in Disney Villainous tier list, and you will probably see the tier list that we are going to be talking about right now as some of the stuff that's saved to it. So without further ado, who's on your E? I want to know who's on your E.
The one and only Lord of the Underworld, Hades.
Oh, wow. All right. So Hades is the only one.
Hades is the only one on my E, yeah.
All right. Tell me why Hades you think is the worst character in this game.
Well, I know it's been discussed before, but we talked about Hades is one of the only villains that only has, besides his actual Titans themselves, one card, which there are 2 copies of, that further his goal. Which being, the get ready to rumble.
Yeah, I've been playing some Hades recently, and I've noticed how lopsided the deck is. It's incredible how one-sided that whole deck is. And you're absolutely right. He's the only villain, I think, in the entire cast where, I actually think it's 3 copies. I also could be completely wrong. But there's only that many copies of the card he needs to advance within the deck. The only copy. The only other way you can advance his goal is by performing the action itself on his realm. And most of the time,
one of which can be covered up.
Right. Exactly. So it's more than likely you're going to be working on trying to keep that one that's not covered up, not or cleared up, so that way you can use it. But most of the time, you're going to get that one covered up regardless.
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't help that it's also right there with the fade action. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a perfect target for even anyone that's not experienced enough. You know, they want to cover that fade action. So it hurts you either way. The only other card really that helps Hades out a lot is the Chariot, which is almost nullified by the fact that there's so many the gospel truths in his fate deck. It
Yeah.
doesn't really even matter when it comes out. It only stays out for a few turns anyway.
I was gonna say, because the sad truth about the heroes in Hades deck is that there's probably like 3 really strong heroes in the deck, and then all the others are kind of just meh. And if you get one of those meh heroes in a Gospel Truth, you're gonna play Gospel Truth to take care of that chariot.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, wow. So Hades is number at the very bottom.
Yeah, Hades is my only E character.
Okay. Well, I will say we're gonna have a slight disagreement, but I think when you get to the D tier, we're gonna still have some similarities. As all of you know, I am not an Ursula fan. And Ursula is still in my E tier, but I'm going to put a caveat on this. As the time that we're recording this show, um, I've been playing against some really good Ursulas. Having said that, though, I do think partially it's because of I have a bias that I do not like that playing as this character. I have seen some good Ursula that is not I hate to use this word, but scumbaggy, where you just do nothing but fate. But I've seen some pretty good strategy by using that to actually make sure that the opponent can't do anything against Ursula. To now where I'm seeing games where even if Ariel comes out, Ariel is no longer a problem. And Ariel coming out when one of the items is already put at the lair. I've been seeing some good Ursula. I think I need to see more in order to really put her up. If I start seeing that, I would agree that Hades needs to go at the very bottom. But right now I'm still teetering on Ursula being at the very bottom of the list. So
Yeah, the
what
reason I didn't put Ursula quite so low is simply because she has so many cards in her deck that will put contracts. You know, she's got all the binding contracts, which is quite a bit of them that take up a large amount of her deck. And then you've got all these other different these cards that will move heroes and things like that. So that's why I didn't put her quite as close to the bottom as I did Hades.
Yeah, I think the partially my bias with Ursula is, and for those of you who have listened to the show a lot, options is a very big thing with me. And one of the reasons why I really enjoy this game is the fact that all the different villains have so many different options. And you're right, Ursula does have cards that work towards her goal. I would actually say more than Hades. I think the biggest issue is the fact that since you don't always have access to all 4 locations in your realm, and even though the cards themselves work well with the binding contract mechanic, they don't work very well against, I would say, 50% of her goal, because one of the goals is pulling out the trident, defeating Triton, because the trident gets attached to him. And that's really all the contracts really do. Because the crown itself can be played directly to the lair. I haven't, even with the new people I've been seeing play, or I've played against Ursula, I haven't been seeing anyone do anything where they play the crown with the layer locked and then move it willingly. I've only seen them do it when Grimsby comes out to lock it. But I will agree that the cards in her deck are very much more consistent than Hades, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, like I said, we'll revisit Ursula because you folks know we're gonna do another tier list episode at some point. It's just I love doing, as a fighting game nerd, I love doing tier lists, and this game just screams it, and I enjoy it. All right, let's get to the D. I will start this time. So going up forward with my list, I'm gonna list the character I think is stronger, and then going to the weaker side. On the D tier, I have Yzma and then Hades. Hades is basically what we've already talked about. I think he's very combo heavy, and he just needs a more consistent deck towards his goal. I think if it was more set up like that, I think he'd be a lot stronger of a character, but I just don't, he's not consistent enough to make that work all the time. Yzma is a little weird. The reason why I put Yzma at this tier is that, and I do think she's a lot higher than Hades, but next to when you get to the C tier, I don't think she's on the same level just because of the fact of how random she is. I think the randomness factor of her makes her quite unpredictable. And you will have games, and I have done this before, where you will run Yzma in about 2 or 3 turns, you can win the game. But then there are turns where or games where you will last a long time trying to figure out the whole gimmick of finding Cusco, playing Cusco, having to defeat a bunch of kids. It's just very random where everything is placed, and you can never, even when you have the ability to play Kronk to kill something, it's not consistent enough to make it so you can win the game fast enough. You could get really lucky, but in in tabletop games and in card games especially, there is a consistency factor, and I do think Yzma's Fate deck is consistent, but I think the way going towards the goal is not consistent enough. If that makes sense, I don't know if that's clear enough.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes sense. She's definitely very much more random based than a lot of the other villains, and just the fact that finding Kronk is really the only way you have to get him out is your 3 copies of After Them, which is a great card, and it can be brought back with the cruel irony.
Right.
But like you said, if you get faded heavy, there's ways that there's ways you can mess with Yzma so much that she's literally just having to guess and play After Them on random decks to get all the heroes out.
Yeah, because one thing I noticed too, because I've played as Yzma and a lot of Yzma recently, that usually Yzma wins when there is not a lot of fake cards left out in play. When even if there is a on the run, because something I actually noticed last night or whatever day recently, I was playing against a Yzma. There on the run was still in the last 4 fake cards, and Cusco was out in the realm. If you play on the run when there's only like 4 or so fake cards left in all those decks, it's almost worthless. It's only really good if Cusco gets played early out into the realm in some shape or form.
For
And
sure.
like, yeah, at that point, it just becomes kind of worthless. So, but the
It's
thing is that
definitely
because she is not fast, getting to that level takes some time. I don't think she's as slow as a character like Ursula, but she takes some time in order to guarantee a win.
it's definitely worth mixing Cusco up more so than trying to put him back
Right.
to keep him from being pulled out in the first place. I think is the better strategy with Yzma, going against Yzma, I should say.
I agree. All right, who's on your D? I want to know.
So my D, the first one I have, and this is probably just from lack of playing her, is Cruella.
Ooh. Okay.
I don't play her a whole lot, so I'm not very good at her. But I just find her cards don't. I find I'm always discarding something. I'm always wanting to do those activate actions more. I'm always digging for Horus and Jasper. Once I get them out, I feel like the game really starts to amp up. Up until that point, there are some useful cards, but I just feel like I'm digging for those 2 allies
I
too
get you.
much for her to go any higher. For me personally,
Okay. I'm gonna save my thoughts on this when we get to a different point in the tier list, because I do agree that Corella at first hand when you play her, she seems like she's not a difficult character. She just seems kind of slow.
I
But
definitely feel like she's slow, but
yeah,
yeah,
she is definitely very much an engine building character that once you build the engine, you are very strong. And I will talk more about that once we get to Corella on my tier list. Um, just because I think the spot I put her will open some eyes. So, who
makes
else is on your
sense.
D?
My other D character is Maleficent, and this might be a
Wow,
little controversial, I know, right?
wow.
But I consider Maleficent because her curses work against her so much. I mean, they're part of her goal, but like Green Fire, she can't go there anymore. You literally you can't go to that location anymore. She has 3 copies of each one of the goons, which are okay, but 9 allies that, she's also got dragon form, which can beat other heroes. I just think she's got too many cards that don't do enough. The Raven obviously is a great card of hers, but it's only one card.
I see what you're getting at. I will say that is a very controversial opinion of mine. I will say this up front. I think Maleficent is the fastest character in this game. And even if someone fates you to crazy lengths, you can still come out on top pretty quickly. You do need to play a little smart. And that's where the skill gap of Maleficent lies, because one of the things I've been trying to do when I've been playing Maleficent recently is that you have to remember you can stack curses on top of each other. And by doing that, that really helps out. There is a reason why Green Fire is a 3 and Forest of Thorns is a 2. Because Forest of Thorns, in theory, is very easily negated by a bunch of heroes. That is for sure. But if you need to play it on top of a Green Fire, and then when you're ready to kind of set your game state to a win condition, you can move the curses around and then put it so that curse is now at a location that wasn't originally filled. And you can kind of manipulate that by making sure you place Green Fire at a location that doesn't have a move action. You can use the Raven to do that too. Vanish is also a good way of doing that as well. Mm-hmm. But I will speak more on Maleficent once we get to where she is in my tier list. I do agree, though, that I think from a first glance, when you look at that from the defense perspective, because she has lots of heroes that can take out those curses in many different ways. I just it's more of I think that's it's a difficult call. Difficult call.
Yeah, and you can't, one of the things with her again with the fate deck is you can't ignore the heroes, because she's got that card that just discards them. Yeah. I think it's Once Upon a Dream or something like that.
Once Upon a Dream is one, and then on top of that, there's other things where like one of the fairies makes it so you can't play curses.
Yeah, she's a pretty brutal fate deck, but
yeah, she does a pretty brutal fate deck. If you're playing someone like Ursula against Maleficent, I could definitely see your point. Definitely for sure. But I think a lot of the characters overall don't fate at the same strength as Ursula does. So I think
another reason I did put her so low is because a lot of her cards are very expensive.
Oh, they are very.
She has a lot of 3-cost cards. Yeah. And so again, that was just a little bit of a negative enough for me to drop her down a little bit.
It's very, very interesting stuff we got going on here. This is why I'm enjoying this conversation. All right, let's get out of the D's. Let's go to the C range. I will let you start this time.
I only have a single villain in the D range, and that is Ratigan.
We are going to have the weirdest tier list. I'm just going to let you know that right now. Now, why is the rat at the C?
Because, like you said before, with I forget who it was. I think it was with Yzma. He takes so long to set up. There's so many cards you have to play in order to get the queen out and get her moved over. Granted, a lot of his cards do work with him, but you don't, I don't know, to me, when I play him, I don't feel like I'm doing much. I feel like there's a lot of setup, and then all of a sudden go.
He's very bursty. I will agree, he's very bursty. I think the biggest thing with me with Ratigan is the fact that since he is bursty, usually even if you're starting off slow, you can get really, if you can start getting the stuff you need really towards the end, there is some very like kill condition setup stuff with either condition, which one of the reasons why I love playing Ratigan so much is the fact that with the dual condition, you are basically playing your board state to the fact that, all right, once I get the Mouse Queen out, do I have the cards out in the realm to ensure that Basil is ready to be defeated if it gets discarded? And do I have that set up correctly so I can do that? And he has lots of ways to do that. But you're absolutely right. It does take a lot of setup. And
he's a fun character for sure. But it's just, that was the one thing to me. It's just like he's a little too too buildy. He builds up a little too much from, and what I guess the part that I'm talking about is, you do all this stuff to get to play this 15 cost card, which is a crazy cost anyway, and
Right.
then she gets discarded or whatever it is, and it's like, okay, like it's almost like I wish I could just go straight into the rat form and
Yeah, and
not
I think
even
that's
deal with
why.
the flipping.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of people talk about with Ratigan is the fact that winning as the rat is a lot more consistent than winning as Superior Mind, just because of the fact that, you know, like usually what happens is that you are able to get the Mouse Queen all the way over to Buckingham Palace, but there are enough fake cards in the deck that allow you to basically pull Basil out, or if Basil's already out, move him to that location and just take
Hmm.
care of it. And then at that point, you basically will have enough allies either in hand or on the board and with certain cards to basically, like, in the next turn, kill Basil. But you have to get the Mouse Queen out first and get to the point where they want to actually do that. Because I've seen some games too where Basil is out and they will get a copy of the Mouse Queen and was a call for help, and they will play the Mouse Queen because they know for a fact that I'm going to have to kill the Mouse Queen first before I even attempt to try to do anything else. So, which requires more money. But no, I could see where you put Rat at the C. I could see it. I don't put him that low, but I do agree. To some extent. Now with my C is a very perfectly wretched C. Not all of them are here, but two of them are here. From strongest to weakest. I have Pete going down to Gothel.
Really?
Yes. So we'll start with Pete first. Pete is kind of the same boat as Yzma a little bit. I think he's a little faster than Yzma consistently. I just think the fact that since every time you have 5 goals, 4 of them get placed out in the realm, and they're at different locations every time. And as playing Pete even yesterday, it's very easy to notice why this character is not as fast as I would like him to be. There are some really cool things you could do with Pete to advance his goals and stuff, but it's not as fast. And the fake cards in the deck are all pretty brutal against him. You can essentially like you'll be able to read what Pete's doing pretty easily, and then all of a sudden you just know you need a fate, and the fate cards can do a multitude of different things to different goals at the same time. Even I would say even not even worry about Mickey Mouse stuff like Goofy, Horace, Minnie are a lot worse. And then like depending on how much money you need, playing some of those remove power effects are pretty bad. Um, so I do think he's stronger than Pete though overall, or not Pete, Yzma, just because of the fact that I think he's a little bit more consistent and faster, and because you're not necessarily searching for stuff, you're more trying to set up. And this is kind of where you were talking about with Radigan, where Pete requires a lot of setup, but once you get the setup going, he kind of starts rolling down a hill. Um, Gothel is the interesting one. So for those of you who are on the Discord, you all know that I was really high in Gothel when Wretched first came out. I thought she was the Prince John, like stupid levels good. As I played her more though, I realized that one of her biggest problems, or two of them, is the fact that one, she is very power starved. She does not have cards that really grant her a lot of power, and on top of that, her even though her deck overall is very cheap, just the way that you have to spend the cards to get the stuff that you need to go is not very consistent. Which will end up happening is that you'll gain a bunch of power, then spend it and be sitting at 0. And then when you need to pull off a combo on a different location the next turn, you can't do it. Um, and the fact that a lot of her locations can easily be destroyed by putting a hero on them, and the fact that since Rapunzel is always out there, you are always trying to fight for, all right, what spaces do I absolutely need to make sure that are kept clean? And one, the tower's your best location, and that's where heroes are always going to get put. So you have to defeat heroes there. And two, funny enough, the times that we're in, Corona itself is a horrible location. It is not very good. It is, especially for how Gothel needs to advance her goal. There is really nothing you can do at that location, and if it gets covered too, it's twice as bad. Because I think all you can do is play a card in Fate there when it gets covered, which makes it even worse. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty bad. Now, having said that, though, there are some pretty nifty stuff that you can do with Gothel, but I don't think it's as strong as I thought. at first glance. Um, it's the biggest thing is that and the thing is that people see her as a strength is the fact that probably compared to the rest of the cast, she has the best like locking the win condition turns. Because if let's say she's at 6 trust, she can easily swing 4 or 5, and then all of a sudden have to force the opponent to start trying to remove trust and stuff like that. And let's say you get even higher than that. Once you hit 12 in a 1-versus-1 match, you're done. There's nothing you can do. And the thing is, that is incredibly easy to do. But getting there takes a lot of work, and she is also a very engine-building character. And the difference with her compared to like Radigan is that Radigan usually doesn't struggle with money that much, for me at least. With Gothel, it's very much a power struggle. I think if she had a better power engine to generate that, I think she'd be a better character. But just for the fact that you can literally move to a location, burn all your power, and then when you need to set up your next combo, you can't do it on your next turns. You have no money to do it. That makes her a little weaker, and I think that's why she gets put at C. Pretty personally.
She definitely is a little power starved. I found that when I play her. I usually mitigate that just by jumping back to the Snuggly Duckling, especially in those first couple turns when it really your trust doesn't matter because you don't have any yet. That's how I personally mitigate that. That's really interesting though that you put those two, because both of those are pretty high on my list.
Okay, I'm curious to see where they are on your list.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk about that when we get there.
All right.
This is going to be we're very opposite.
Yeah, we're very opposite, but it's a very good conversation, and I'm enjoying this very much.
There are still several that neither one of us have said that we're coming up on, so I think we're about to line up a little bit more.
This is about to scare you. I think your B is about to scare you.
What's on your deal?
Yeah, so we all know who my favorite character is to play in this game, and I actually put him very high on my initial tier list after playing him for a bit. But I think I finally have settled. I have done some soul searching. My B, going from best to worst, is Scar, then Jafar. Yeah. So here's the deal. Jafar is the running joke I've been telling people, for those of you who are fighting game. Jafar is definitely the Ryu of this game. He is definitely the most balanced character in terms of the speed, the defense, the offense with that character. I think he is the perfect sense of like doing all the different mechanics in the game. And having played a lot more of Jafar and playing against Jafar recently, I've seen the strengths and the weaknesses of the character, and they're very balanced. I know people initially said that Jafar is a slow character, but compared to a character like Hades, who needs to really fetch some cards from his deck and doesn't have a very good cycling method to do that, Jafar has a lot better time of doing that. I think Jafar's really only big weakness is the fact that if he can't get the 2 items he needs right away or in the wrong order, he gets a little slow at the start. But a lot of players, and myself even too, playing Jafar recently, have been making that a lot faster.
Especially if you get them in the wrong order. If you draw the lamp your first hand, I mean, it's almost worth discarding it just to not even deal with it.
Yeah, it's really rough. But yeah, I think that, and once you get that going, taking care of the genie and taking care of moving the lamp to the palace is really easy to do. I think the biggest like weaknesses of Jafar, the fact that like the opponent will then can put a bunch of wishes on Genie, making him very expensive. And Jafar doesn't have a very good power generating mechanism, because when Genie gets played, you're probably not going to move him. And that's where a 2 power spot is. And all of all the top portions of his realm can get covered by heroes and make it so the only place you can gain power through just the gain power action is the Oasis, which really wrecks him hard in terms of just trying to gain money. That's his biggest weakness, because he also needs that to be able to play the cards that he needs. But once you get past that, you're home free. Dealing with Aladdin and Abu if they capture the lamp is not a problem at all. Period. He's got the allies, and Hypnotize does the job. I think he's a very balanced character. Now,
going into that, I actually think Jafar is the most balanced character that they have created to date.
I having played more Jafar, I 100% agree. I think he has all the perfect strengths and weaknesses. And for those of you who have seen the making of the Villainous documentary, they specifically say that Jafar is the character that they were like, this is the speed that we want. This is the way that we want him to play. We're literally balancing the entirety of the roster around this character, and that says a lot to the strengths of this game in terms of balance overall. Because even though we're doing this tier list, I would say relatively even like I was talking about Gothel, Pete and Hades and all that stuff. I think these characters can still stand a chance against the a lot of the B-A range characters that I'm going to have on this list. But holy crap, Jafar is just incredibly well designed. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, let's get to my friend Scar over here. Scar, I also think is balanced. However, the reason why I put him higher than Jafar is because of one thing, is the fact that I think he moves a little faster. The only catch with Scar compared to Jafar is that Fate is a little stronger against him. However, if you play Scar correctly, I think he's one of the fastest characters in the game. Not as fast as what I think Maleficent is fast, but I would say like 15 characters. I would say he's probably like number 4 or 5 in terms of speed. However, you have to pressure your opponent to Fate you because of the speed, not because of other stuff. And I think that's where he starts to struggle a little bit. Having played him more, I think what the thing too is that I've gotten to the point when I play Scar that I'm no longer getting hooked. But at the same time, I'm still getting to points where you get to the win condition and they Hakuna Matata you and they get a hero back on the board, and then you're like, well, crap, now I have to go get that one. And it starts making your life a little more difficult, but usually I can set it up. But yeah.
As a Scar main, I'm offended.
I'm offended too that I have to put him here, but I'm trying to be as honest as possible. Because in my initial tier list that I put back a few weeks ago with After Perfectly Wretched and some other stuff, I actually put a Scar a lot higher on this list. But I think after playing him more against some other characters, which we will get into with some of the higher characters, I just don't think he holds up as well. He can definitely beat characters. I have destroyed some Dr. Faciliers. I have destroyed some Captain Hooks. I've even taken out some Prince Johns. Even some Evil Queens. But it's not consistent enough to make me feel strong enough to put him higher on the list. I am a Scar main. Yeah, our Scar mainness is how we bond here, Stuntman. But
exactly.
I can't. I do feel solid with this choice, though. If him being at this part of the tier list, it still makes me happy where he is.
Let me explain my reasoning for just a second.
Go for it.
When I was mainly making the list, what I was going off of was like the number of cards that help them achieve their goal. So I definitely put Scar a little higher because there's only, to me, really one dead draw in his entire deck.
Which is still a useful card that I've learned recently. And I know what card you're talking about because it's probably a consensus the worst card in the entire game. But I know what you're talking about. But yeah, that's where I put Scar. Who's on your B?
So I actually also have Jafar. He was I didn't put him in any particular order. So Jafar definitely lined up. He's there. Yzma is on my B, just because of, like we talked about already, how random she is. Her cards can really help her, and sometimes you just sit there the whole game and you can never find Cusco. So she's middle of the board for me. And then the other one was actually Queen of Hearts, because she has a lot of cards that help her goal, but a lot of those cards become useless when they're turned into wickets. So she kind of hit the same problem that Maleficent did, with her own cards working against her, which annoys me when you have a deck that your own cards are working against you. But I feel she's very, very middle of the road on, how many cards she has that help her, because she does have a lot of cards in her deck that help her.
Right.
Obviously, one of the main card being to take a shot, which is a win. Like the win con is to play a card. That's interesting. So she falls very middle of the road for me.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing with Queen of Hearts, she is a little higher on my list, but I think the biggest weakness of Queen of Hearts that will put her lower on tier list with people is the fact that her main allies are the card guards, but you also have to convert them into wickets, and they no longer basically are out. They're still allies, but they aren't used to vanquish. And her heroes are kind of they're not super brutal except for like Alice. Alice is like the only like constant one that can get really up in your face. But when Alice gets played, it changes the game a little bit on how you have to play Queen of Hearts.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it makes and I know people talk about that like horrible scenario where essentially you could possibly get stuck as Queen of Hearts, and I completely don't know how they missed that. But I've never seen that happen. And I am yet to see that actually happen in a match because I think Queen of Hearts is the only character I think in the entire game that actually has like a complete lockout situation where she literally cannot win the game, which is weird to think about.
I guess I
But
haven't even heard of that yet.
yeah, no. So the idea is that so depending on when Alice is played and we're because the idea is that your opponent can still move your card guards when Alice is out, but you cannot use the action to move them around. And once they get moved, they can't be moved by your move action. And if you play too many of them out and don't have enough of them at Alice's location, her allies become useless, especially if they get played out. So like the King and the Tweedle Boys.
Makes
So
sense. Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't think about that.
yeah, it's a very rare situation that I think I've only heard someone once tell me that they got put in that scenario, but I've seen a few games where there were 4 card guards or 5 card guards, and they all got moved to, like, 2 locations, and Alice was at a location with no allies, and I think one of the other allies were out play, so it gets a little dicey, but, we'll talk more about Queen of Hearts when we get closer up on my list to where she is. I do have some things to say about um, speaking of getting up there, we're now into the A's. When we get to the A's here, I would say qualifies these characters as probably, we're talking about doing a tournament. These are the characters I expect to see on people's teams of characters the most. Let's start with your A, Stuntman.
So for my A's, I have Captain Hook.
Okay.
He
Solid
has
choice.
he has so many cards that help with his objective. Um, just from digging through his fate deck to adding extra actions. He's another one that I feel is just a very well-rounded. Actually, oh my goodness, we're talking about A, not okay. Sorry,
Oh my God, he spoiled things. Spoiler alert.
I did. I went to A plus. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it.
So we'll back up. My A
Back up.
list. My A list is Prince John. Is on my A list.
Okay. Very, very, very obvious for Prince John.
Yeah, he's a very basic hero. He does a lot of stuff. All of his cards really work for his goal. And that's kind of where I was getting into the point was like getting to a point where the cards are working more in his favor than being dead draws.
Yeah, that is definitely something that's getting up on this tier list.
And my other A card is one that you had at the very bottom, which is Ursula.
Holy shnikes.
And again, this is going purely off of how her cards work for her.
Okay.
Not because a lot of people, Ursula is not a fun villain to play. The keeping a location locked all the time is, I think, it was a bad design choice. She's just not a fun character for most people. But she does have a lot of cards that help her. Just from being able to move items, go back into her deck, get stuff, moving heroes around, digging through your deck to find those contracts. Even her condition cards are so brutal.
Yeah.
She has some brutal condition cards.
Yeah, they are rough.
I just feel like in terms of her cards helping, she's pretty high up there.
Okay. Wow, that's a statement right there that I was not expecting. Well, I will definitely agree with Ursula. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I do think Ursula is probably higher on the list than I have her right now, based off some stuff I've been seeing lately. I agree with you. I think the biggest issue with Ursula for me personally is that of all the characters in the game, she's the only one I do not have fun playing. And it doesn't help the fact that she's a very wonky character to begin with, and the way that you have to play her is very different than a lot of the cast.
I mean, we can go into Ursula for. I could talk about what's wrong
Yeah.
with Ursula forever, but the main thing is being the constant lock token and the non-standard vanquish. Two gimmicks. I think if they had chosen one of those gimmicks, it would have been okay. But both of them, I just feel was too much.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say about Ursula.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, one of these days we'll have to revisit the Ursula conversation, because I think a part of the tide of Ursula is slightly changing within our community, which I think is good. I always tell people Ursula is my favorite female villain of all the villains. She is the one I definitely do want to play. It's just the tides are changing. All right, let's get to my A. Are you ready? Got some weird stuff. We got some weird stuff. From left to right, so strongest to weakest. We have the rat, and we have Cruella.
Okay.
So here's the deal. Ever since I played this game, I've been playing this game since basically Evil came out. I have always been of the camp that the rat is one of the strongest characters in this game. And I think the reason for that is that he is an engine builder. His goal in reality, you have to kind of play it as, all right, I'm playing the Mouse Queen. I'm trying to move the Mouse Queen to a position where the opponent wants to get rid of it so I can go kill Basil on the next turn. And I think that's great. And I think going towards that goal is a lot smarter than trying to focus directly on just trying to build up the Mouse Queen. And Radigan has the tools to do that. And I think
that's true. That's very true.
I think his deck is incredibly consistent for what he's trying to do. I have seen a game recently that went very poorly for the rat, where, no joke, he did not draw any of the gears until like the last 10 cards of the deck, which is rough. But you have ways to mitigate around that. Radigan doesn't really have an issue gaining power at all. He has a really good fate location at the lair. And if you build that location correctly, you can go over there and activate something that's usually in your favor. He basically has an item. When you activate it, it basically acts like a scrying directly towards something that you need. So whether it's a gear or the robot queen itself, one of the two, that is incredibly useful, or even getting the blimp. And let me talk to you about the blimp. The blimp is the best card in the entirety of this game. I think, honestly, the blimp itself makes this character where you can basically set it up where, as long as you have the power, which usually you do, you can play the blimp at the lair, activate it, move the robot queen in one go, immediately have to force your opponent to fate you next turn. It's incredible, that setup. And overall, I think the rat is really strong in that aspect. I do agree, though, that if you start off a little slow with the rat, I think you can struggle, but I think he's probably a lot stronger overall. Now, when it comes to Cruella, it's interesting because I think the tides have changed with Perfectly Wretched, because usually what happens is that character that they say is the straightforward character is usually the character that people kind of give a lot of garbage to, Hades and Scar to be calling out. But Cruella kind of is interesting. I think one of the things I've noticed recently that people have been doing a lot more with Cruella is that, so, the whole goal is to capture puppies. And like, her deck is very much geared towards capturing and putting puppies out on her realm. But the issue that I see a lot of players run into is that they put out puppies. That is not what I've been seeing. I've actually been seeing a lot more playing the puppies all over the realm. So get like maybe 7 or 8 puppy tokens out and then really start hammering on capturing them. And let me tell you, that's pretty consistent. And on top of that, you're talking about like filtering out the cards from her deck and stuff. She is a much better and also more fun version of how Ursula, I think, was kind of designed with the whole fate shenanigans. Cruella, in theory, can go back and forth between her 2 fate spots and still accomplish a lot. Her other 2 locations that aren't fate are still really strong too towards the goal. She does have a little bit of a power problem, but she can quickly circumvent that. Thanks to I Live for Furs. And if you're doing what, like I said, you're trying to put puppies out, as long as you got a puppy at each location, you're gaining 4 power. And then all of a sudden, once you get above, 7 or 8 power with her, you're basically set for the rest of the game. You don't even have to worry about power necessarily that much. But
Very true.
I think she has really strong fate defense and is also really good towards her goal. I think the biggest issues are the fact that once the fate cards start coming out to play, she has a hard time dealing with them just in the fact that she only has 2 allies and she does have to vanquish normally. She does have ways to kind of circumvent that process, but like I said, if you're struggling with power up front, it's a little difficult. And on top of that, something I was also pointed out to recently was you can kind of play the fate deck to both of those ways of playing Cruella, where you're strictly trying to capture puppies from the get-go, or you're trying to lay out the board and then capture them. The Fate deck is kind of 50-50 split on how it wants to kind of hinder Cruella, which can really detriment you if it hits you hard in one of those ways. But once you kind of get over one of those hurdles, you're pretty set with the character. So I would say Cruella's pretty strong on the A's. So
Those are all really good points. And like I said, her being so low on my list is just the fact that I don't play her very much. I don't enjoy that play style of the constant trying to set stuff up and then, in 2 or 3 turns the building and then rushing. I prefer the constant, satisfaction of, okay, we did this, now we did this. Like, with Scar, you beat Mufasa, then you're constantly going towards something, and you're making those little milestones along the way.
Yeah, I think what half the issue too with Cruella is the fact that even if you get a puppy out on the board, you haven't actually accomplished your goal yet. Like, because the whole purpose is you're trying to capture the puppies, and if you have
Right, it's like a 2 or 3 step process to actually get them captured.
yeah. Once you get the puppies out on the board and then you get the allies out to capture them, you can start getting the engine really moving. But the thing is that takes time. And if you don't, and the thing is, she is not necessarily a fast character, but I would say she's more of like a defensive character where, like I said, she has really 2 solid fate locations. One of them definitely progresses towards her goal very well. But that's my stance on Cruella. She's definitely much higher than I was expecting initially playing her way back when I first got the expansion.
I can see that.
All right. We're getting to the top tiers. So we're getting into A+ and S. So I already know one of them that we share based off spoilers.
Yes.
We'll go me on the A+ first. Here's my left to right, strongest to weakest. These are all very strong characters too. I think all 3 of these are very on the nose with each other, and honestly, you can probably flip them around for me, and I would probably still agree with it. I have Queen of Hearts, Prince John, and Captain Hook in this order. Reason why I have Queen of Hearts so high on this list is because she is quite quick. Even with the whole shenanigans that you can pull out with Alice and stuff like that, the whole dealio is that unlike Ursula, where I feel like Ursula, you have to constantly be on the lookout for Ariel at all times. You don't necessarily have to do that with Queen of Hearts because unlike Ursula, you have a lot of options to try to accomplish the goal pretty quickly. Like I said, the really only downside of the character is the fact that once Alice comes out, you kind of really have to rethink how you play the character, but she moves incredibly quickly. She's got lots of card guards. She's got ways to activate more than one at a time. She doesn't have a power problem. She's got a really good fate location. She's got a really strong 3 power location for what she's trying to do. And her cards are relatively consistent for the most part. There's a few. The only time it's not consistent is when you don't want to play a card that's in your hand based off the scenario. So, let's say you actually draw an off with your head or take a shot early. And you can't play off with your head because there's no heroes out yet, or you can't defeat it, the cat or out. That's usually when those cards are not consistent, but most of the time, because like we said, the card guards aren't really going to be used for vanquishing stuff. Off with your head is really good for trying to take care of the rest of the heroes that play.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can definitely see how you could have her that high. I mean, like I said, the biggest drawback for me on her was just how her allies become useless at a certain point. But
yeah, they do.
It is part of her win condition to do that, so I could definitely see how you could have her a little higher than that. And she is very fast.
Yeah, the thing too you have to keep in mind too is that there's 8 card guards in the deck. So if you absolutely have to take care of a hero at some point for whatever reason, you as long as you know how many are left in your deck, you can be like, all right, I can activate this card guard and be okay with trying to use this card guard to kill someone. But you obviously have to plan for that and know what's coming. But that's Queen of Hearts. For Prince John, I think we've talked about plenty of times stuff. I think Prince John is probably one of the most strong, solid characters in this game. He is probably the best defensive character in the entire game, where it helps the fact that his whole goal is just to basically gain power. He is very engine building, where essentially his engine building is very defensive, where even if the opponent starts playing heroes out and if they're able to steal money, he can still gain lots of money really fast. Beautiful, lovely tax is incredibly good. Greed is one of the best conditions in the game.
Yes.
He's a money monster and he's a defense monster. And like you said earlier, Prince John his deck is very, very consistent towards his goal. So I think he's
one of those that you're almost you have to fade him, but when you fade him, you can help him. But if you don't, if you just ignore him, then he's gonna win in 5 turns or however long it takes to just go straight and build the 20. It's a hard balance to play against him. To know, okay, do I fade him and get those, let him get those lovely taxes, or do I just kind of try to ignore him and do my own thing and almost race him to his goal?
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed recently. Actually, funny enough, one of Prince John's weaknesses is the fact that he can't operate fast. And what I mean by that is that he can move, but if he's not building an engine while he's doing so, he really struggles towards the end of the game, because if you don't have allies out that can deal with heroes, if you don't have ways to take care of heroes that steal money, you then have to start spending money to defeat them, and then you're going backwards. So that's something I did notice. So you can play Prince John quickly, but you can't play him too quickly, because that means you're not spending money on cards that can help benefit you down the road. That is the only real weakness I've seen with Prince John. The other one is the fact that if the opponent decides to fate Prince John early, it's kind of funny where Prince John is an engine building character, and the way the opponent has to fate Prince John is also to engine build, where they have to place heroes out to know that, all right, I'm going to use these heroes to steal money or hinder his ability to make money. That's also kind of, but the thing is, when you do that, usually the fate spaces are not strong against your goal, so the opponent has to kind of think that way against playing against Prince John. But then, even with doing that, Prince John can still make a ton of money. Yeah. The only way it really hinders his progress on making money is if Robin Hood comes. That is the only character that really kind of hinders the progress.
Which is unfortunate, because he has such a fun fate deck. I wish there was a little more than just the taking of the 4 power, and I wish they had put some sort of other little mechanic, like a Peter Pan, or made Peter Pan strong. Not Peter Pan, sorry, Robin Hood, and made him stronger, and then had like a mini Robin Hood come out, like even made Marion, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a design choice, but he is a very well designed character, so I should probably just stop talking.
Oh no, it's okay. But sometimes we gotta be critical of these characters, man. I want this game to shine in all of people's eyeballs. That's why I don't like talking about Ursula. Now the last character, Captain Hook, which I know we shared on this list. Captain Hook, in my opinion, is the most consistent character in this game. The reason why I say that is mainly because even though he has a locked location, even if he doesn't have the map, he's always able to play allies to the Jolly Roger to get ready to kill Peter Pan. Once the map is taken off, which usually you will be able to get to in some shape or form. The only issue that Captain Hook will have is getting Peter Pan out. That is the only thing. After you get over that hurdle, he's home free. There are ways to stop him, but you even in this, like, I was playing against a bunch of Captain Hooks this past week, and even if you put a taunt on a hero or whatnot, Captain Hook has got 500 different ways to take care of that.
He has so many allies and their strengths are off the charts. Like,
the real only issue is the fact that Peter Pan, getting him out is the problem. And the thing I find you run into when you play against a Hook and Hook is playing against you is the fact that the opponent's not going to fate you that much. And the reason for it is that they don't have a reason to. Because they're scared of when Peter Pan's going to come out. And if Peter Pan gets played out, even before the location is unlocked, you've basically set Hook up to win. And then you have to be like, all right, I now have to play heroes literally just to set myself up to block him. Which there's only, I believe, 2 or 3 copies of Taunt. And even with the wishes don't do jack against Peter Pan because, like you said, the allies are incredibly strong.
Right.
I literally saw Captain Hook win against Peter Pan when Peter Pan was like 15 strength. It was stupid or something like that.
So I would say the only card that is really not a good card in his deck, and it's still a good card, it just doesn't necessarily help with his objective, is the case. It's the 2 cost gain 1 power is really the only card that he has that doesn't almost immediately help him set up to win.
No, I think the only thing it really does is that if he does get faded early, they'll usually put it on the location that, even though he technically can still fade there if it gets covered because it's on the bottom, they'll put like the case at that location so they can just gain money. Which makes sense.
Exactly.
What makes a lot of sense. It's kind of funny. It's funny too because Captain Hook literally never goes to the Jolly Roger the entire game. You never have to go to the Jolly Roger. You really don't. As soon as you get a cannon, you're like, all right, I'm going to set the cannon up so I can move Peter Pan and kill him in one turn. There is no reason to ever go to the Jolly Roger unless you absolutely have to for whatever. I rarely see people go to the Jolly Roger. And even saying that he probably does not have a very good start base location, he is still one of the best characters in the game. Incredibly strong.
Agreed.
All right.
Obviously. Is that the one that's lined up on ours so far? Besides that and Jafar are the 2 that have lined up so far.
Which is funny. Which is really funny. Because now I'm curious what your A+ list is. So we know Captain Hook is on it. So who else is on yours?
Captain Hook, Dr. Facilier.
Okay.
I think obviously he's on your S list, it sounds like.
He's on my S list. I will not tell you where he is.
We kind of agree on that one. Very strong hero. All of his cards, with the exception of Mass Spirits, are, help him in some way. He's a very strong, a very fast villain to play, and his cards just shine. He doesn't really have any bad cards, I'll say.
No, he really doesn't. That's one of the benefits of that character. He does not really have any bad cards. No bad cards at all.
And then the other one is actually Pete.
Oh my God.
Pretty low for you. Oh my
God. Are you doing what I think you're doing? So based on what you just told me, I know who's in your S tier, and I'm quite surprised. I'm quite surprised right now.
I think we share
Talk about Pete for a second, though. What was it? Talk about Pete for a second. Why do you put Pete higher? Because I know that's quite a few steps higher than where I put Pete.
I put Pete high because he has so many goals or objectives that his deck, he can't really afford, from a design standpoint, he can't afford to have dead draws in his deck. Every single card just about in his deck does something to further his objective.
That's true.
Even the bandits, being able to play those allies out and defeat the heroes is huge. I mean, we play here at the house, and I don't think I've ever seen the play 6 power card. I've never seen that objective land on the Podunk Landing. So it's always the bandits that get that job done. Play games, I mean, that's literally one of his objectives. Granted, there's 4 of them, but there needs to be, because you're going to draw 2 conditions as soon as you play it. His cards are so powerful, I think.
His cards are definitely very powerful. I think and you're absolutely right. He doesn't really ever dead draw. I think the issue is the fact that it takes so long to set up to get to one of the goals. Because like, even for, let's say, like, play a game, you can get lucky, but he has cards in his deck that allow him to mitigate what's on the top of his deck. So that way you can set up for play a game, but that still requires setup time. With the bandits, you have to at least get 6 power and then get enough bandits, and then you can get that power play one. Or if you have one of the items that has the extra play card, you can also do stuff like that too. I've done stuff like that before. It just requires a lot of setup. And on top of the fact that when all the goals are scrambled, it's difficult. I think Pete's probably the only one I don't necessarily really agree with on your list, personally. But I also see where you're coming from, because I've seen the crazy stuff that Pete can do where he accomplishes like 2 goals in one turn, and then you're like, oh crap.
The primary P player at our house, and just like she does with Evil Queen, she does some crazy stuff, and I'm just like, how did you just do like 3 goals in one turn?
Oh
You know,
god.
and it's just constantly, building. And when I play him, I try and accomplish as many of the goals like back to back to back to back as I can. So you have those 2 turns where you suddenly went from 4 goals, no one's worried about you, to you're sitting at 1 goal. You have to move one item, and you got the game. Something like that. And
One thing I will definitely say, and this is something we haven't really mentioned a lot based off of even both of our tier list a little bit, is that there is definitely an advantage to having a character that can win on a turn, rather than having to wait till the start of their turn. Because like with Pete, for example, granted he does have some goals that are at the start of his turn, but if you play him correctly, you can set it up so you accomplish a goal, complete another goal in the next turn, and win the game.
exactly.
Even same thing with stuff like Captain Hook, Doctor Facilier, the Rat. All these characters have the reason why these characters are so high. Even for me, like personally on my list, is a lot of these characters have very they're instantly win conditions. Like their conditions can be met on the turn, and as soon as they're met, you win the game. There's just no way of stopping. But I do see where you're coming from a little bit, but I think that's like the only one I'm like, yeah.
Again, the main thing I was basing this off of was how much their cards help him.
True.
And I just feel like his cards do. I mean, again, from a design standpoint, with him having technically 5 different objectives, he doesn't have room for dead draws.
I think the only bad cards in his deck are the conditions too. Like all the other cards are pretty good.
Even the conditions are good. The one of them isn't so good, but the one where you can draw from the bottom of your deck, I mean, that helps with that can help with your play games and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. All right. It's time. I will let you start us off. I think we share probably the top tier.
We share one, I think.
We share one. I assume it's Evil Queen.
Right? It is Evil Queen. So yeah, I have Evil Queen. I'll talk about her last, so we can. I'll just go straight into yours. So I have Scar, Evil Queen.
Jesus God.
Scar, Evil Queen, and Mother Gothel.
Holy.
Yeah, completely different. I know when you said them earlier, I was like, "Oh man, our lists are so different."
This is weird, wild stuff. But what this says though is that literally every person probably has a different perspective on this tier list, and this is what makes
everyone listening to us right now is like, "Why would you put Evil Queen at the top?" No, just kidding.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Evil Queen is the worst character in the game. What
worst? Jafar, not Jafar. Hades and Evil Queen just need to swap, and
exactly.
But going to Scar. So
let's talk about Scar.
Again, kind of the same thing with Pete. He doesn't have very many dead draws in his deck. I mean, all of his cards help him so much. Long Live the Kings, get something out. Hyenas, obviously, are going to be your main way to take care of your heroes, to build your succession pile. Be prepared. You got to get those hyenas back, get those conditions back. Stick with me's obviously lets you do a free vanquish action. There's just every single one of his cards, with the exception of Feeding Frenzy, which I have found there are some situations that it's a decent card.
Situations, yes.
It's not a completely dead draw. 70% of the time it is, for me personally, but again,
I agree.
I just feel like he has so many cards in his deck that help him with his goal. Is the main reason why I put him so high on the list. He doesn't have a bunch of strong cards, but almost every card does help him in some way.
So here's the deal with Scar. I agree with you. All of his cards in his deck, except basically for Feeding Frenzy, are good. I think the big kicker with him is the fact that, he's definitely a defeat a hero type of character. That is his gimmick. For the first issue is the fact that, number one, he has a start of your turn condition, which means that the way the Fate deck is built is based around the fact that you can take away something. With that, part of the issue is that Scar is a very risk-reward character. He has really good cards that go towards his goal, and they can really set you up for, accomplishing the goal. Having said that, though, you know, this goes into things I've told people, like, I don't think Zazu's a very good hero. I think having playing Zazu out early when you do a Long Live the King and he's the one hero, putting him out instantly puts you back because you're putting a hero out willingly to block some spaces, hoping that you'll get Mufasa at some point to kill him. And as soon as you put the bird out, someone's going to fate you and put another hero out and start blocking options. And the biggest issue with Scar is the fact that once you start blocking a lot of those options, you are starting to hinder the character a lot. And even the fact that, like, I do think he's a fast character. I hate this damn card so much. Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. But I don't like seeing it appear in my damn Fate deck.
I know it.
It's the Hakuna Matata. If it wasn't as strong as it was, I think would make Scar a lot higher on my list.
Scar, if Hakuna Matata didn't exist or existed in a nerfed capacity, I think Scar would be a top tier. I mean,
yeah.
everyone would pick him because he's a well-known character. He has a very, easy, quote unquote, objective to understand at least. Honestly, one of the fixes for me, make the lionesses four strength.
Yeah. Yeah, I think doing something to make it so like Nala and Sarabi would be a little stronger. And then that way that scores you a little bit more points because essentially that would make it so if you take out Mufasa and then you take out like a Sarabi or a Nala, one, they can't be put back into the realm.
They can't come back, yeah.
Yeah, and two, it would make it a lot easier. So let's say if you got one of those, Simba and Mufasa, you essentially have won the game.
Exactly.
But it's tough. I want Scar to be upper on the list, and I had to do a lot of soul searching with this because if I was trying to be super not biased in this entire tier because I was like, all right, I have to put the thinking goggles on and really think about this. I would love to put Scar above the Evil Queen. I would love to do that, but in my heart, I cannot. And it's the whole fact that unlike other characters where you're trying to fetch heroes and defeat them, Captain Hook kind of has this, but he has enough tools to really kind of take care of things when they appear. Scar has lots of ways to vanquish, but he doesn't have a lot of ways to make sure that he has the allies in the right positions at the right times to vanquish. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. And the fact that once you put more heroes out in play, then you're no longer like your resources start getting used up. And then
that's one of the definitely. I think Scar has a couple, I would say, design flaws. One, his realm is not a very good realm. Granted, he has 2 spaces with 2 player cards, but the Savannah and the Gorge are utter garbage for spots. They're just bad spots to go.
Yeah, I think the biggest. I mean, I've done a lot of Scar deep dive in the past few months, and I now consider him my best character. But I think the thing, like the problem with the Gorge, is the fact that number one, it's got the fate action at the bottom and a vanquish action. So that means that if it gets covered up, you can't do. You're only going there just to ensure that you can fate somebody. Like, because sometimes you'll get put in a situation where you can't vanquish. And like I said, when you lose options, basically your turn is going over and taking one action and being done, and that sucks. And the same thing with the Savannah too. The fact that literally the discard action is at the bottom, and I forget what the other. I should know this.
It's a gain 1 power.
It's a gain 1 power. Oh yeah.
That's what I was saying. The Savannah and the Gorge, if they both their top locations get covered, you can't even play a card at either of those locations.
I think one of the things that does, like, and this is when it comes into saying the character is very thematic, is the fact that the character's realm is very thematic towards the movie. Like, Pride Rock has got the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Elephant Graveyard is definitely like the prime prep yourself. The Gorge is definitely one of the primary vanquish action locations to go. Savannah makes sense for like having the fate icon there because that's Rafiki's tree and all that stuff. And also making it his weakest spot because Scar never goes to that location technically in the movie. But he does have some real problems, and I think it's also a weakness of the character. But you have to use the thing with it though is that the locations are built to do specific things. Like Pride Rock and the Gorge, I would say, are his primary vanquish spots. just because of the weird setup stuff that you can do at Pride Rock and the Gorge with the move action. If you play like a Stampede or a Hyena, stuff like that. But I can also see it though, because like I said, I think Scar is an incredibly fast character if you play him right. Now Gothel. Tell me about Gothel.
Mama G, as I call her around the house.
Oh boy. Mama G.
Mama G. So again, it's one of those things where a lot of her cards. So with Mother Gothel, I consider her to basically have two objectives. Obviously, you have to keep Rapunzel away from Corona. Right. So that's objective number one. Then you have to gain 10 trust. So, I mean, it's the same. It's kind of how I've been saying, for most of the game. I mean, she literally has cards that say gain trust.
Right.
So that, to me, puts her... I mean, she's completing her objective by doing that. She's gaining trust. She has a ton of allies that you can use to, knock Rapunzel back to the tower or just straight up move her away from the tower. She has conditions that let her just, no, you're going back to the tower. So there's just a lot of her cards help her with those objectives.
Yeah. I know. I literally thought the same thing when I first played her. I do agree with a lot of stuff. I do agree. Like I said, I think the biggest issue is the fact that once she starts losing power and a hero gets played to the tower, you start locking yourself out of some different. Now, I will say this: unlike Pete, I understand where you're coming from with this character. I do get it, because like I said, I originally thought Gothel was an S tier candidate. I think maybe with a little bit more play and a little bit better understanding of the weaknesses of the character and how to work around it, she probably could be higher on my list again. But right now, just the way that I've played her, I just haven't seen that strength. I will say this though. Of all the freaking characters from that new set, she is the most fun for me to play.
I definitely agree. She is the most fun to play.
I tell people this, so it's really funny, because I was talking about how Cruella, I think, is a better design, like Ursula, like kind of Fate a little bit more. I think Gothel's a better design Hades, where literally the biggest thing is and like you already said it, the cards work towards her goal. They work both towards both the goals that she had. Where she's trying to keep Rapunzel at bay as well as trying to earn trust. I think she's a much better combo character than Hades, because literally her whole gimmick is the fact that you're setting up options to gain a big swing of trust in one go, and she does it incredibly well. I just think once the weaknesses come into play with her, I think she really struggles hard. All right, Evil Queen.
Let's talk about Evil Queen for a second.
Let's talk about.
Let's talk about the most powerful card in the entire game.
Called Snow White.
No. The Bloody Magic Tomes.
Yeah,
this card should have never gotten past the rough draft.
The thing is with Evil Queen, you say Magic Tomes, and I'm like, we can have a whole podcast about what is the best card in Evil Queen's deck. Because literally every card in her freaking deck is incredibly good. They're all consistent. They all work towards her goal. There is no weakness to this character. The only absolute weakness you can think of possibly is possibly, and this is not even a weakness, it's just the raw luck of the fact that you don't get any of the ingredients cards. Like, it was also just talking about the fact that
again, even if you don't have the ingredients, you have 2 copies of each one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Got 2 copies of Black Magic, which basically says you go find whatever ingredient you want, or an item, which the Magic Tomes are an item. The Magic Tomes, let me tell you this. This card, man, I can't with this card.
Oh God.
It's a 2-cost card. It's a 2-cost card for one. Definitely not okay. As an activate, which is free, just be on Activate Square and then you can do this. You look at the top 4 cards. Do you know how powerful looking at the top 4 cards of your deck in a 30-card deck is?
Yeah,
that is insane. So you got Black Magic, which why would you go find an ingredient when you can just go find your Magic Tomes, play them, look at the top 4 cards. You're probably going to have, one of your 8 ingredients, because there's 2 copies of each one. You're going to have at least 1 copy in there. pull that bad boy out. Oh, you're sitting on, the mines where you can play 2 cards. Play that ingredient. Oh, look, it was Black of Night. Guess what you get to do? You get to duplicate an effect. Why don't you magic tomes again? Look at the
Oh
next top. Look at the next top 4 cards. I mean, I've literally, like I'm saying, I've watched my wife play this character. I'm a little salty.
God. No, it's okay. We're all salty about this
She's
character.
amazing at Evil Queen. But
Oh
I've
God.
seen her dig through half of her deck in one turn.
Yeah, it's Evil Queen is incredibly good. I wouldn't even necessarily say her deck is consistent. I just think every single card in that deck is stupid.
Yeah,
It's
whoever
stupid good.
whoever designed Evil Queen had so much fun in making her. Yeah,
Yeah, no. Honestly, I would say the biggest strength of Evil Queen is the fact that how easy it is to get Snow White out and as well as to defeat her. Because the thing you have to keep in mind is that the way that Evil Queen vanquishes is by using Take a Bite, and Take a Bite is used by brewing poison, which is used by consuming power. And here's the biggest thing: Evil Queen does not have an issue gaining power in this.
absolutely
And
not.
literally, and the thing is, the way that she was built was, let's say you have 12 power, you can dump all that power into poison in one action. And on top of that, she has other ways to gain poison outside of just doing the brew action in a multitude of different ways. So you don't necessarily even need to spend all your power to even get enough to start murdering Snow White. And the thing too is, it's funny enough that, like, all right, so for every hero, which are all 7 dwarves, gives her +1 strength. I have literally seen evil queens, even after all the fate nonsense, because people are like, I want Evil Queen to win. We're gonna fate her. They will literally play every freaking almost every single damn dwarf out on the board, and they still win. Every location is covered. There's nothing you can do. They just murder Snow White, and then they're like, "Oh, I won the game," and I'm like, "Well, that was a time." She can be defeated, so it's not like she cannot be. Um, as Stuntman I know has done, Scar can defeat the Evil Queen. I have also done this myself. One of the characters on this list for mine, I know personally has done it. Um, she's just an incredibly strong character. I
Yeah,
think
I
probably out of
mean,
all the characters, unbalanced, but not in the strong way where she's just incredibly good. Um, in a tournament, I would expect to see a lot of people run this character. Just
I definitely agree with that. I mean,
the sheer
uh,
fact that how good she is, and just I mean, the only weakness she really has up front is the fact that her fate location from the get go is not very strong, and usually by the end of the game, you will have Snow White covering the other one once the location is or unlocked. So she doesn't really have any general reason to go fate most of the time, but she moves so quickly towards her goal that it doesn't really.
Snow White,
Even
or not Snow White, Evil Queen, in my opinion, is the epitome of a a villain that is designed around thinking players are going to play one way and not thoroughly playtesting it enough. Because the way the decks are designed is that when a hero comes out, it's almost like the developers were like, okay, when the hero comes out, she's going to go brew poison and then defeat that hero.
right,
Why? I mean, she has 5 copies of Take a Bite for that reason. She's got these cards that say lose poison. Most of the players that play her don't brew poison until they're ready to kill something, because
yep,
that's a smart play. So
right,
I think there's a lot of design flaws in this deck, and I'm not trying to be funny at this point. Like there's
yeah,
actually a lot of design flaws
yeah. No,
from
I
a
agree.
trading card game perspective, and just from a game perspective in general. The deck is overpowered from a non-biased standpoint.
Yeah, I think that, and I agree. I think the biggest issue is that you're absolutely right when she was designed, because like every single character in this game, even Ursula, you want to be defeat the heroes when they come out, even if they don't necessarily strongly affect your goal. The character is always going to destroy options. And the thing is that Evil Queen has cards that allow her to get around that type of stuff. So even when the heroes do come out and cover the actions at spaces that she still needs, she can get around that pretty quickly. And on top of that, except for there is one hero in the entirety of the deck that is Doc. And Doc is the only thing that is like this hero before defeating any other hero. The issue though is that by default, all the dwarves except for I think was it is Grumpy a 4 strength hero when he's by himself? If I'm not
Grumpy is
mistaken.
4 when he's by himself.
Okay, but he's normally 3. Okay.
Normally a 3.
Yeah, he's normally 3. So like all the dwarves, I think, except for a few of them, are usually like 3 or 2. And they're not, and like 3 poison is like nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even in the long term scheme of things, like even if you're able to defeat Doc, it's not like with like Scar, for example, where like if you get the last hero into the succession pile and you Kuna Matata it out, there's no way to really guarantee that because there's enough other cards in that deck where and there's enough copies to take a bite, which is how the Fate deck is built for Evil Queen, that if Doc gets discarded, there's still a pretty low chance of Doc coming back out the next time the deck gets reshuffled and such like that, even if you get all the dwarves out in play.
If you want to even look at the Fate decks, compare Love's First Kiss to Hakuna Matata. For one, there's only 2 copies of Love's First Kiss, but it doesn't even put him back in the realm. It puts him on top of the Fate deck.
Right. It requires you to take a whole other Fate action, and depending on who you're playing and like where you just fated, that could be another turn or 2 away until you actually get to put that. I won't go. So one of the things I definitely do want to do at this point, I will say later date, is definitely doing like a fan balance patch. And I've been talking about this for a bit, where once we kind of know the Disney line of this game is kind of at its end, we'll probably do like a big tourney of the last characters that get released, and then we'll probably do a fan balance patch. That is definitely a show I want to do where we just kind of sit down and kind of dive in. Yeah, I think Evil Queen is definitely a character because the thing with her too, you have to keep in mind is that yeah, we know she's overpowered, but how do you make it so she's balanced with the rest of the cast? Because you don't want to necessarily then make her an E character.
If you really wanted to balance Evil Queen, the first thing I would do was make Magic Tomes cost 4 and make it cost 1 to activate.
Yeah, I would make her. I would have to force her to spend more power on stuff. I think that's the biggest thing. Is the fact that Magic Mirror is a 2. Granted, you have to spend 3 to activate it, but like still with that, it is so with her power like gain, it's incredibly easy to spend 5 power 1 turn just to play the mirror and then activate it and get snow.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't have a single card in her deck that costs over 2.
Right. No, she doesn't. It's incredible. Yeah. Like the most expensive thing that you do is literally pay for the Magic Mirror to fetch Snow White out. That is the most expensive thing.
Mm-hmm. That's insane.
Yeah. All right, we've done enough on Evil Queen. Let's finally get to my S tier.
Yes, let's hear it.
But well, number 1, it's Evil Queen. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. She's incredibly powerful. She's always been in the top of my list ever since I've been doing tier lists for this game. I don't think she's going to leave that anytime soon. I'll laugh if Gaston is better than Evil Queen, or even Oogie Boogie. If Oogie Boogie, something definitely.
Oh man.
Now the next one afterwards is Maleficent, and the pure reason why Maleficent is in this slot right here is how fast she is. She, in my opinion, is one of the only counters to Queen, in just the sheer factor that Evil Queen can't fate early in order to accomplish her goal. She needs to go back and forth between those 2 core locations to really get anything accomplished. Maleficent can easily just start putting out a lot of curses pretty quickly, and then put stuff all over the board. Her 2 fate locations don't really benefit her that much. Unless she needs to move a curse around after she's already moved something around to begin with. So she'll move to the 1 location that's got a move thing on it. She's incredibly quick. She's got 8 curses in her deck. They're relatively easy to play. Raven's a really good card. Yes, I agree that her allies aren't necessarily very good, but you can chuck those if you need to. You'll only play allies when you absolutely need to kill stuff. And I just think she's incredibly fast. Just the way to get to her condition is pretty quick.
Definitely, I'll agree with you to an extent on that, because she is very fast, especially when played against Evil Queen. But against villains that have those fate squares available and are pretty easy to get to, I'll say I would definitely disagree that she should be that high. Against Evil Queen specifically, absolutely. She's probably the best Evil Queen counter there is, and that's why I expect to see some Maleficent being played in the tournament because she is one of the best Evil Queen counters.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will say the only real weakness she's got is the fact that once she starts getting her curses out, her condition is very easily seen. So the opponent will fate, and usually the fate cards in the deck will do something about something. Not always though, and that's something people need to keep in mind is that they're not every single hero, not every single item is going to actually do something against the curses. There's a good chance they will, but they won't always do something. And especially if you fate Maleficent early, you can get a hero that's not going to do anything against a curse, and that curse is still going to sit there. For some of the allies, the curses will actually benefit. And you also have to keep in mind too that she does have this little card called Dragon Form that is very similar to an Off with Your Head, and it's actually stronger. It can kill a hero. It can kill any hero except for the prince, and it can unless they don't have the sword on them. And it makes it so if someone fates you, you gain power. And guess what? If you gain more power, you're going to more be able to, play those curses a lot easier. And it's funny too. It's funny because you know what? The one that both Evil Queen and Maleficent, they both have cards that make it so when a player fates you within the next turn, you get a bonus of some kind.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Very similar thing. Not a lot of people realize that about the Dragon Sin. That it does have that little benefit to it. The last character on my list is one that's always kind of been spot where he rightly deserves is Dr. Facilier. Dr. Facilier is also an incredibly fast character. He's got lots of really good cards. Some of the most satisfying cards in the game to play. One of the most satisfying characters in the game to begin with. Doesn't really have any bad cards. And it's funny enough, too, that really when it comes to his Fate deck, the effects are worse than the actual heroes themselves. The funny thing is Maleficent has some clear weaknesses, but Dr. Facilier doesn't really have a weakness besides the fact that the Fate cards can do very specific things against how he accomplishes his win condition, but he can usually get around it pretty quickly. He's incredibly quick. He doesn't have issues with power. He's always got ways to do something. He's got really good cards. The cane is incredibly good. He might be weird up front when you first play him. Once you understand him, he's incredibly good. There is nothing more satisfying.
The only argument against being in the S tier is the card Mass Spirits. Because that card can stop you from winning the game. If you're sitting on your win con, you play, cards will tell, you pull that card out, and that's it. You didn't win. Yeah, so that's my only argument against him being, because I put him in my A+. So I definitely agree that he's a strong villain. He's got great cards, but that card in particular made it to where I couldn't quite put him all the way at the top.
I think the biggest thing with the Mass Spirits is that you have to play them correctly. And I think what goes into that, and it's not to say that people don't play with the Mass Spirits correctly, is that you have to find the right times to play them or chuck them. Because first things first, if they are in your discard pile, they cannot affect you. If they are in your hand, they could possibly affect you. But you either need to chuck them, or if you see a 2-strength hero out, which there are a lot in Dr. Facilier's deck, Fate deck to be specific, you can go to the Vanquish spot, play the Mass Spirit for free, take out a hero in the same turn. That Mass Spirit's going in your discard pile. You're not going to be missing that Mass Spirit at all. I think what happens is that a lot of, and granted, that's not the only way that Mass Spirit can get in the. I think what a lot of players do is that they'll play the Mass Spirit for free because it is a free card, and then they will. And then what happens is that card is going to get mitigated into the fortune pile in some shape or form. When I have played against doctors before, it happens occasionally, but I rarely find it when I play Almost There. And when I play Almost There, I actually fetch out a Mass Spirit.
See, it's the exact opposite for me. I feel like every time I play him, which was pretty frequently for a while when me and my wife were doing our little home tournaments, every time Almost There, it was, Mass Spirits were popping up.
Yeah. I can see. I mean, granted, the other thing I have to give Doctor a little credit for is that he does have a randomness factor to it, but unlike Pete and unlike Yzma, he can mitigate it very easily, which is the fact that he has 3 copies of Cards Will Tell, and even when you get a bunch of cards in that fortune stack, you can go to the Voodoo Emporium and just play Cards Will Tell just to get rid of stuff. Because you know how it works, you pull 3 cards out. If one of them is Rule New Orleans, it's not in that mess, you win the game. And if you know there's a bunch of garbage in there, you can mitigate that. It's worth sometimes going there and getting rid of that stuff. So that's the one thing I think that also him up there too, is that he has some pretty good mitigation towards some, like, even though people are fading him and getting rid of those cards, he's got that. Plus he's got other ways of doing it too with the powder, which I have super underrated when I was playing the character, and now it's incredibly good. And his I forget which it's what desperation that allows him to get cards back from the fortune stack.
Yeah, you get a card out of the fortune stack. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I keep forgetting if that's the terror or desperation allows you to do that.
Desperation. Yeah.
It's definitely desperation. So, but yeah, I think it's also something that makes him really strong is the fact that he can really mitigate against what Fate can do compared to a lot of the cast without directly having to use allies. And also his allies are really good. Lawrence is incredibly good. Shadow Man's really good. Voodoo Dolls are good. Really the only one that's not good up front is the Mass Spirits, but you just got to make sure that you use them as soon as they get played.
Yeah. Well, now if you put them on the board and you vanquish a hero with them, they go to the fortune pile.
No, the Mass Spirits?
Yeah. If it gets played, if a card gets played at all, it goes to, as far as I know. I could be wrong on this.
Let me look this up really fast. We're gonna go to the power of the Villainous wiki. Shouts to Wero for putting this together. I'm gonna pull this up right now. And if that's the case, I've been playing this character wrong the entirety of one character. Because I, as people know, Dr. Facilier is also one of my favorite characters in play. No, he does not go in there. No, he has no additional ability. Yeah, the only thing that makes him slightly unique is the fact that he does act as an ally / item. And the only real thing that does is if Juju gets played, Juju can essentially counter a Mass Spirit, because Juju's thing is it can put items into the fortune. So if they wanted to play Juju onto a Mass Spirit, they can put Spirit in their way. Yeah, interesting stuff. Learn something new.
There you go.
Yeah. That's a tier list right there, man. You know what? I will. This is why I love having these conversations, because everyone's tier list is different. I think the only consensus we really had, like in terms of positions, was Evil Queen, Captain Hook, and Jafar, and then relatively most of our are like around the A plus tier, A tier range. We had some characters that would like go up.
The A plus, the A and the B weren't exact, but they coincided pretty frequently.
Yeah, they coincide. But yeah, this is God, what a fun show this was. I love talking tier stuff. One last thing I want to try to discuss a little bit before we end the show. Now that we have our tiers out there, so I'm not going to go super deep into this super topic, because I'm going to say this for an episode of the show later down the road. But one of the things, for those of you who have not been part of the Discord, in June, I'm going to be hosting a Let's Get Wicked Disney Villainous tournament, where it's going to be, you choose 3 villains, you take them in. We're still going to work out some of the kinks with the rules, with the team structure and everything before I officially say how this is going to work. But you basically choose 3 characters, you bring them in. There will be a cash prize, so people are gonna be bringing in their best 3 characters to run through this tournament. It'll be a double elimination. My question to you, Stuntman, is that based off the counter matchup stuff that we understand with these different characters, what would you say are gonna be the top like 3 to 6 characters we're gonna see at a competitive level of a Villainous tournament? Like, what do you think are what are the characters?
I think the most common we'll see is going to be, obviously, Evil Queen will be the most common, if not on every single team. Dr. Facilier, just simply because, like we just said, his cards are super fast and he's super good.
Yeah.
And then probably like you said, probably Maleficent. She's pretty well balanced. Even though I had her pretty low on my tier just because I don't feel like her cards, just because I think I put too much weight on the curses working against her, especially Green Fire. But she is that counterplay to Evil Queen, and so I think a lot of people will probably pack her in their kit and bring her, yeah, just specifically to try and fight Evil Queen.
I love the fact that because I know you're a Magic player, and the fact that you call it kit is awesome. I just want you to know that. I am not a native Magic player, so it's gonna be so cool. People using all these different terms and stuff when they go into this tournament, talking all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh wow, I have not played enough trading card games. Um, I would say, me personally, I agree that Evil Queen, Doctor, Maleficent will probably be the most frequent characters we see, and I think Maleficent would not be as up there on the list if it weren't for the fact that she's a true counter to the Evil Queen, and I think some people will really try to run with the Queen as much as they can. I think some other characters we'll definitely see are going to be Prince John. I definitely think Prince John will be up there. I think he is a really strong candidate for countering all three of those characters in some shape or form. I think he has to get a little lucky and a little speed factor in there, but I think he can do it. In terms of some other characters, I can see Jafar and Captain Hook. As much as I know I put Queen of Hearts really high on my list, I sadly do not think she will just be played just because of the fact that I think some people will be scared of that weird scenario where if Alice gets played, they can start moving the card guards around to the point where she's really hard to work with.
I think
Um,
also she's not a very popular character, even though she might
no,
be fast and she might be relatively easy to win with. She's not a very popular character,
no,
so that's the reason I don't think she'll see very much play.
no. It's funny too because I actually just watched the Disney Villainous documentary that Prospero Hall did. Which, by the way, if you folks have not seen this, oh my god, it's incredible.
So
That's
great to watch. Yeah,
it's
it's
like
a really good watch.
if you want any input on where Jafar is in this tier list, that is like video itself proves it. But they actually talked about how Queen of Hearts was one of the weird wildcard characters they put in the game, which I thought was it just kind of shows you how they like putting the wild cards into this game to give those underappreciated villains a little bit more. That's why I'm glad Prince John's in this game. And I know people like Rob, but he's definitely a character I think is a little underappreciated in the overall scheme of things. Um, but I think the only other two characters we'll see, but I don't think we'll see as frequently, is the Rat and Scar. I think those two characters are really strong contenders. I think Scar can counter some of the characters from the top. I actually think Scar is the best counter to Doctor. Personally, just because of some weird shenanigans that Scar can do. He's also good against Prince John to some extent. He's not good against the Queen of Hearts, believe it or not. Trust me, I've been playing a lot of Queen of Hearts matches with Scar recently, and I have not been doing hot. I think the rest of the cast is kind of a gamble. I think it comes down to personal preference at that point, which characters you play with the most and you understand the most. Because, like I said, I if I were going in this tournament, which I will not be because I am just hosting it, I would be running Scar, Doctor, and Rat. Just because those are the three characters that I know the best. I know all their tricks. I know how they operate. It's still funny too to this day that every time I play Yzma, I forget how half the damn deck works. Um, just with the fact that she is so weird. But it's not against the design. It's just the fact that she just definitely breaks the game in a lot of ways in terms of the mechanics. But those three characters, that's what I would bring in with. But I think when you put money on the line, I think a lot of people will try to be like, all right, I'm gonna run Evil Queen. Let me try to make the most efficient Evil Queen possible, and then I'm gonna try to
And
go with
that's exactly what you see in like high level, Magic and in any tournament really with money riding on it. I mean, they're gonna bring in, the most overpowered, the easiest to win with, the fastest. They're gonna try and bring those things in, and hopefully we will see some diversity in the tournament, and hopefully we'll have some Scar players. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I'm a
think we're gonna
Scar
see very
fan.
many Scar. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of them just because he is one of especially judging from the community and how people talk about him, he's one of the ones that people are scared to play because his fate deck is so brutal, especially with that high risk, high reward kind of a
Yeah,
situation. People
he
get
is definitely
stuck in
the
those
hardest
loops.
character in this game to learn. Like from a straightforward goal perspective, it makes sense what you're supposed to do, but from an actual like learning the character to make sure you can efficiently accomplish your goal without getting screwed over, he is definitely the hardest in the game. But yeah, no, and just for everyone knows, we are doing some things to help kind of diversify for this tournament. We're not all set in stone on how the mechanics work. One thing we are going to do is we're going to do a ban mechanic where essentially players can, like, based off the other player's team, they can force one of the characters on the team to be banned for that particular match. So let's say, like, for example, you're playing up against a person that's pretty much running Evil Queen the entire tournament. You can basically ban Evil Queen for that match, and you can play against one of their other characters. You do have a limit to how many of those you will be able to do. We're still working on the mechanics of that a little bit. We're also doing a thing where I'm doing some achievements where essentially there will be some character specific achievements. So if you really kind of want to main a character and try to get all their little gimmicks and stuff, there'll be ways to earn some extra prizes as well as doing some team composition stuff. So if for those of you Kingdom Hearts fans out there, which those of you don't worry, we're doing Kingdom Hearts show soon. There's like, if you have characters all from Kingdom Hearts on your team that were like in the Kingdom Hearts games, that's an achievement, stuff like that, just to kind of help diversify. Because I definitely do enjoy seeing diverse rosters. And I'm trying to put, and just because how strong Evil Queen is, and you're putting money in a tournament, I'm just trying to make sure that the players are trying to diversify the rosters. But I've already been seeing some really one of our friends, the Great Salmon. For those of you who know him on the server, I've been playing some matches with him recently. They will not be going up on the channel, but let me tell you, there is some sick shit that guy found with Jafar. Oh my god, that stuff was incredible. That man faded me 3 times within a span of a turn. Holy crap!
Pulling out the conditions with the other condition.
He pulled 2 conditions and then pulled out the 2 conditions. It was
I
insane.
love doing that. That's a great Jafar combo because again, Jafar I think is one of the most balanced characters because you can do stuff like that, but it's gonna cost. You can look for any deck in your discard, but if you really want to mess with your opponent, and they've got that setup, you can go back and pull those 2 fates out. It's pretty sick.
It's crazy. But no, I'm looking forward to the crazy stuff that people pull off. Part of the achievement thing is the fact that I want people to pull off the crazy stuff. And that's like, when I see things like that, that's what makes me love this game even more. That even, I've been playing this game now since August of last year, and I'm almost now at a year of me playing this game, and I still see things I've never seen before. And from going from someone who played a lot of fighting games, one of the most precious things you can do is see the same character you've seen 1,000 times be played differently in a way that you've never seen before months after you've seen that character. Oh my god, this tournament is going to be incredible. So more on that though when we get to it. We're going to be doing a full podcast on the tournament once we have the official rules set up. It's going to be a few weeks, but we expect it in sometime in May to have that show where we're going to talk about the tournament. So. But I think that wraps it up. I think that's our tier list. Let us know your tier list in the comments on YouTube, and go on Discord too and post your tier list. I want to definitely see what everyone thinks. There's definitely obviously, just with Stuntman and myself talking, there is a very diverse opinion on these characters. And obviously, I know when we initially did the tier list show back in the 3rd episode, I know Wero had a very interesting take on the tier list thing too, with the immediate wins as well as the start of the turn wins. I think there's definitely some stuff that can be deciphered from how you look at the tier list. But thanks again for joining me, Stuntman. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
I love talking to guests when they come on the show, especially when they're just into it as much as I am. And I know you and I are we're the Scar folks on the Discord, so I always love talking to my fellow Scar mates. So
yeah, Scar, he's definitely fun. Once you learn him, and he's just so fun. And the victories are so satisfying.
There is nothing better than when you can literally sing your way into a victory while you're playing Scar.
Yes, exactly.
I do it so often, and I shouldn't, but it's fun. But until then, I hope you will prepare. No pun intended with the Scar joke, right? I hope you will all be prepared for this tournament when it comes around, when we talk about it. I'm really looking forward to it. And like I said, there will be cash prizes. So stick with me. Man, I'm making all the Scar jokes right now, and I'm not really intending to do it. Great. But until then, thanks again, Stuntman, for joining me. And until then, everybody, I hope you all stay wicked.